Boss Knob Grogfang stood in the throne room of the Warboss, trying not to flinch as another grot went sailing over his head. The little green git squealed all the way across the room before hitting the wall with a satisfying splat. Right proper mad the boss is, Grogfang thought to himself, adjusting his crude telescopic eye. The cyborg implant whirred and clicked as it focused on HeadButt's massive form atop his throne made from welded-together tank parts. "Sneaky gits," HeadButtz roared, spittle flying from his massive jaw. "Day's killin' me, boys, and I can't even see 'em to krump 'em back." The assembled orcs shuffled nervously. Getting killed without a proper fight wasn't just bad luck, it was downright un-orky. One of the boys near the front raised his hand tentatively. "Maybe they just cowards, boss. Maybe they not worth krumpin'." HeadButt's response was to grab the nearest heavy object, a rusty cogwheel the size of a dinner plate, and hurl it at the boy's head. The orc ducked just in time, the cogwheel embedding itself in the wall behind him. "Not worth krumpin'," HeadButtz bellowed. "They killed 20 of my boys in the last week, and not one of 'em saw what hit 'em." Grogfang's good eye gleamed with interest. 20 orcs dead, and no one saw the enemy. Now that sounded like a proper hunt. His mechanical eye whirred excitedly, zooming in and out as if already searching for invisible prey. "Sounds like they good at hidin', boss," Grogfang ventured, stepping forward. "That makes 'em worth huntin', I reckon." HeadButt's massive head swiveled toward him, eyes narrowing dangerously. "You sayin' you can find a sneaky gits, Grogfang?" "I'm sayin' I'd like to try, boss." Grogfang grinned, showing teeth filed to points. "Ain't had a good hunt in ages. All the hoomies and the spiky boys, they just stands there and fights like proper enemies. But invisible enemies. Enemies what hide and sneak and don't fight fair." His grin widened. "That's a hunt worth having." The Warboss leaned back in his throne, making the welded metal groan under his weight. He studied Grogfang for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Grogfang, you's always been good at hunting. You find this invisible gits and bring me their heads, or whatever they got instead of heads. Don't care, long as they dead." Grogfang thumped his chest in salute, his crude armor clanking. "You got it, boss. How many boys can I take?" "Take whoever you want," HeadButt's growled. "Just get it done." And Grogfang, "Yeah, boss. If you don't find 'em, don't bother comin' back. I'll krump you myself for wastin' my time." Grogfang's grin never wavered. "Wouldn't have it any other way, boss." As he turned to leave, his mind was already racing. Invisible enemies killing orcs without being seen. In all his years of hunting, from tracking squigs in the fungal forests to stalking Humi scouts through bombed-out cities, he'd never hunted anything truly invisible. The challenge sent a thrill through his scarred green hide. He stomped out of the throne room, ignoring the sounds of HeadButt's throwing more things at his remaining audience. Time to pick a team. Can't hunt invisible enemies with just any orcs. Needs special ones. Clever ones. The camp sprawled before him, a chaotic collection of ramshackle buildings, fighting pits, and mech workshops. Smoke belched from crude chimneys, while the sound of brawling, shooting, and general orky mayhem filled the air. Somewhere in this mess were the orcs he needed. First things first, Grogfang muttered to himself, heading toward the commando barracks. "Need someone who knows about sneaking, and I know just the git." The commando barracks were set apart from the main camp, partly because the other orcs found them unsettling, and partly because commandos had a habit of practicing their sneaking on unsuspecting victims. Grogfang approached carefully, his mechanical eye scanning for movement. "Oi, Stabby, you in there, you sneaky git?" Silence greeted him. Grogfang frowned and took another step forward. "I know you's in there. Got a job for you. Proper sneaky job." Still nothing. Grogfang's frown deepened. He hated when commandos played their games. With a grunt of annoyance, he turned to leave. "Right behind you, boss." Grogfang spun around, his slugger already half-drawn, to find Stabby standing less than an arm's length away. The commando was covered head to toe in black war paint and bits of camouflage, his red eyes the only splash of color. "Zog me," Grogfang growled, holstering his weapon. "How long you been there?" "Since you started yelling," Stabby replied with what might have been a grin under all that war paint. You said something about a sneaky job. Grogfang studied the commando. Stabby was smaller than most orcs, which helped with the sneaking, but he more than made up for it with sheer dead hardness. His collection of knives would make a dark Eldar jealous. Invisible enemies been killing the boss's boys without Bane seen. Boss wants 'em found and crumped. Stabby's eyes lit up with interest. Invisible, like proper invisible or just good at hiding. That's what we's gonna find out. You in? The commando didn't hesitate. Course I'm in. Been trying to tell these gits for years that sneaky is proper orky when it's done right. This'll show 'em. Good. Know where I can find that mech, Blitzmek. Need someone who knows about. Grogfang waved his hand vaguely. Technology stuff. Stabby pointed toward the eastern edge of camp, where black smoke was rising in thick columns. He's probably blowing something up over there. Usually is. Right, you coming with? Stabby shook his head. Gonna get me gear ready. Invisible enemies means I need my best stabbing knives. Meet you later, Grogfang nodded and set off toward the smoke. As he walked, he couldn't help but feel a growing excitement. This was already shaping up to be the best hunt in years. The explosion hit just as Grogfang rounded the corner of a ramshackle barracks. The blast wave knocked him back a step, and burning debris rained down around him. Through the smoke, he could hear cackling laughter. It worked! It worked! Did you see that? The voice was high and excited, with a slightly manic edge all mech boys seemed to develop. Told you the red button would make it go faster. Grogfang pushed through the smoke to find Blitzmek standing in the middle of a crater, his face blackened with soot, but split by a massive grin. Various mechanical bits were scattered around him, some still sparking. Blitzmek, Grogfang called out. Need to talk to you. The mech boy turned, adjusting his welding goggles. Oh, hey, Grogfang, did you see that? Made a detector thing. Was supposed to find Humi tanks, but it found the ground instead. His grin widened. Found it real good. Grogfang couldn't help but grin back. Mech boys were mad as a bag of squigs, but their enthusiasm was infectious. Yeah, I saw. Listen, how'd you like to hunt invisible enemies? Blitzmek's eyes went wide behind his goggles. Invisible, like you can't see 'em invisible. The mech boy started bouncing on his feet with excitement. Oh, I could make things. Detector things, but better than that one. He gestured at the crater. Ones that find invisible stuff instead of dirt. That's what I'm hoping. You in? Course I'm in. When do we start? Can I bring my tools, all of them? Even the experimental ones? Bring whatever you want. Just be ready to move out soon. Blitzmek was already gathering scattered bits of technology, muttering to himself about wave frequencies and detection grids. Grogfang left him to it and headed toward the shooting range. The sound of sustained dakka grew louder as he approached. Even from a distance, he could recognize the distinctive dakka of a big shooter being fired with enthusiasm. He found Boomgob exactly where he expected, standing in the middle of the range with his massive weapon spraying bullets at everything that could conceivably be considered a target, and quite a few things that couldn't. With a sigh, Grogfang waited for the inevitable. After another few seconds of sustained fire, the big shooter clicked empty. Boomgob stood there pulling the trigger a few more times, frowning at his weapon. Needs more dakka, he announced to no one in particular. The heavy weapons specialist turned, his face lighting up with simple joy. Oh, hello, boss. Did you see? I hit all the things. Grogfang looked at the shooting range, which now resembled a battlefield after a particularly intense engagement. Yeah, you hit all the things all right. Listen, want to come hunt invisible enemies with me? Boomgob's brow furrowed in concentration, which for him was a monumental effort. Invisible enemies. How's I supposed to shoot what I can't see? That's the fun part. We find 'em first, then you shoot 'em. The simple orc's face split into a massive grin. Oh, I like that plan. Find 'em and shoot 'em. Can I bring me big shooter? Wouldn't want you without it. Can I bring extra dakka? Much as you can carry. Boomgob's grin somehow got even wider. As Grogfang turned to leave, he noticed a small commotion near the Gretchen quarters. A group of grots were huddled together, pushing something toward the front of their group, or rather someone. And stay out, one of them squeaked. Use bad luck, you is. A particularly scrawny grot stumbled forward, clutching a small bag of possessions. Even by grot standards, this one looked pathetic. Wasn't my fault the squig ate Sad Tooth, the Grot protested. I told him not to poke it. Everything's your fault, Niptooth, another Grot yelled. You's cursed, Grogfang watched with interest. A Grot that other Grots considered bad luck. That took some doing. He stomped over, sending the huddle of Gretchens scattering. You, he said, pointing at Niptooth. What's your story? The Grot looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. Nothing, boss, just a misunderstanding. I'll just go find another place to— How many times you almost died? Grogfang interrupted. Niptooth blinked in confusion. Ah, lots. But you didn't die. No, boss, just got lucky, I guess. Grogfang grinned. A Grot that survived lots of near-death experiences. That wasn't bad luck, that was useful luck. The kind of luck that could find invisible enemies by stumbling into them. You coming with me? Grogfang announced. What? Niptooth squeaked. But boss, I don't want to. I mean, I'm not good at anything. Ask anyone. Don't care. You're good at not dying. That's useful. But— Grogfang leaned down until his scarred face was inches from the Grot's. You can come with me and maybe die, or you can stay here and definitely die when I krump you. What's it gonna be? Niptooth's shoulders slumped in defeat. As the Grot scurried off to get his things, Grogfang allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had his team. A sneaky git, a Mad Mek, a Dakar-obsessed Heavy, and a lucky Grot. Not the most conventional hunting party, but then again, conventional hadn't been working against these invisible enemies. An hour later, they assembled at the edge of camp. Stabby had added even more knives to his already impressive collection. Blitzmek had constructed some sort of detection device from what looked like a box, 3 radio antennas, and a traffic light. Boomgob had strapped so much ammunition to himself he clinked when he walked. And Niptooth— Well, Niptooth just looked terrified. Grogfang addressed his team. We's heading into the ruins where the invisible gits have been doing the killing. We gonna find 'em and then we gonna krump 'em. Any questions? Boomgob raised his hand. Can I shoot things? Yes, Boomgob, you can shoot things. Even if they's not invisible, Grogfang sighed. Let's just find the invisible ones first, Blitzmek bounced excitedly. Can I test my detector? I added a blue light. Blue makes it luckier. Sure, whatever. Stabby, the Kommando just nodded, playing with one of his many knives. What about you, Grot? Any questions? Niptooth raised a trembling hand. Can I stay here? No. Worth a try, the Grot muttered. Grogfang took one last look at his assembled team. They weren't the biggest or the strongest orcs in the camp, but they were his. And more importantly, they were different. Different might be just what they needed to hunt an enemy that didn't fight like proper enemies should. Let's go hunt us some invisible gits, he roared. The team set off toward the ruins, leaving the chaotic safety of the orc camp behind. Somewhere in that maze of rubble and shadows, invisible enemies waited. Grogfang's mechanical eye whirred with anticipation. The hunt was on. The ruins loomed before them like the bones of some massive beast. Grogfang had seen plenty of destroyed hive cities in his time, but this one was different. It didn't look destroyed enough. Proper unorky, that is, Stabby observed, scanning the ruins with a practiced eye. Too neat. Too planned. Grogfang grunted in agreement. His mechanical eye clicked and whirred as it adjusted to different spectrums, searching for any sign of their prey. The place was perfect for ambushes. Thousands of hiding spots, elevated positions, underground passages. A hunter's paradise or nightmare, depending on which end of the hunt you were on. Blitzmek's detector suddenly erupted in a cacophony of bells, whistles, and flashing lights. The mech boy fumbled with various knobs and switches, muttering to himself. Is it working? Grogfang asked. Course it's working, Blitzmek replied indignantly. It's detecting all sorts of things. Metal things, stone things, radioactive things. We need it to detect invisible things, Stabby pointed out. Working on it, just need to adjust it. The device settled down to a steady clicking noise. There. Now it's only detecting things what shouldn't be there. Boomgob, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly perked up. Can I shoot something now? Not yet. Grogfang patted the Heavy's shoulder. But soon. Promise. They moved deeper into the ruins, following what had once been a main thoroughfare. Burned-out vehicles littered the street, their metal shells providing perfect cover for anyone wanting to stage an ambush. Grogfang found himself growing more excited with each step. This was proper hunting territory. "Boss," Niptooth whimpered from somewhere near Grogfang's knee. "I don't like this place. Feels like something's watching us." Grogfang was about to tell the Grot to shut it when his mechanical eye caught something. A scorch mark on a wall, too precise to be from orc weapons. He moved closer, examining it carefully. "Stabby, look at this." The commando materialized beside him, studying the mark. "Not from any weapon I know. Too clean, no spread." Blitzmek pushed between them, waving his detector at the wall. "Interesting, getting strange readings. Energy signatures all wrong for proper Dakar." The mech boy pulled out what looked like a small telescope welded to a calculator and pointed it at the scorch mark. After a moment of frantic button pressing, he looked up with excitement. "It's from one of them pulse thingies, Tau shooters." "Tau," Grogfang frowned. He'd heard of the blue-skinned gits but never fought them. "Aren't they supposed to be all shooty and cowardly?" "Yeah, but they got tech," Blitzmek said, practically vibrating with excitement. "Sneaky tech, invisible tech. This is gonna be fun." They continued following the trail of scorch marks and unusual damage patterns. Each sign told a story to Grogfang's experienced eye. The Tau had been moving in small groups, hitting isolated orc patrols and fading away before reinforcements could arrive. Classic hit-and-run tactics, but with a level of precision that was distinctly un-orky. "They's been herding our boys," Stabby observed, pointing to a pattern of marks, "leading them into kill zones." Grogfang nodded. "Smart, but not smart enough. They'd gotten comfortable, these Tau, comfortable enough to leave signs." "Boss," Niptooth squeaked suddenly. Something moved. Everyone froze. Grogfang's mechanical eye swept the area, switching through different vision modes. Nothing, but the Grot's instincts had kept him alive this long. "Spread out," Grogfang ordered quietly. "Boomgob, get ready." The heavy weapons specialist's face lit up with joy as he hefted his big shooter. They moved into a rough formation, using the rubble for cover. Blitzmek's detector started clicking faster. Stabby seemed to melt into the shadows. Even Niptooth found a hiding spot, though his trembling made the piece of sheet metal he was behind rattle. Then Grogfang saw it. A shimmer in the air, like heat distortion but wrong. His mechanical eye locked onto it, tracking the anomaly as it moved between cover positions. He roared, pointing. Boomgob didn't need to be told twice. His big shooter erupted in noise and violence, spraying bullets in the general direction Grogfang had indicated. The shimmer twisted and dove for cover as rounds sparked off invisible armor. More shimmers appeared, and suddenly the air was full of blue pulse fire. The energy bolts sizzled past Grogfang's head, leaving those distinctive scorch marks on the rubble behind him. "Can't see 'em to shoot 'em," Boomgob complained, though he kept firing anyway. Stabby tried to flank around, but pulse fire drove him back. The commando snarled in frustration. "Need to get closer." Blitzmek was crouched behind a burned-out vehicle, frantically adjusting his detector. Grogfang realized they were being surrounded. The Tau had led them into a trap, just like they'd done to the other orc patrols. But Grogfang wasn't just any orc. He was a hunter, and hunters learned from their prey. "Fall back," he ordered. "Into that building." They retreated under covering fire from Boomgob, whose enthusiasm for Dakar was proving useful even if his accuracy wasn't. The building Grogfang had spotted was a half-collapsed hab block with multiple exits and good sight lines. More importantly, it would force the Tau to come closer if they wanted to finish the job. Inside, they took positions at windows and doorways. Pulse fire continued to pepper their position, but it was less concentrated now. The Tau were having to spread out to maintain their encirclement. "They's being careful," Stabby observed. "Not rushing in." "Good," Grogfang grinned. "Means they think we's dangerous." Niptooth, cowering in a corner, suddenly yelped. "Boss, the wall! Something's coming through the wall!" Grogfang spun to see another shimmer, this one moving through a hole in the hab block's outer wall. But this time they were ready. As the invisible figure entered, Stabby was there, his blade striking out at where the shimmer's center mass should be. The knife struck something solid, and suddenly there was a Tau warrior visible, blood leaking from a rent in his stealth suit. The alien tried to bring his pulse rifle to bear, but Stabby was already inside his guard, more knives finding gaps in the armor. "Got one," the commando crowed. The dead Tau's stealth field flickered and failed completely. Grogfang studied their first kill with interest. The armor was fancy-looking. Blitzmek was already pouring at it with glee. "Oh, this is beautiful," the mech boy exclaimed. "Look at all these gubbins. Stealth field generators, sensor baffles, pulse dampeners. Can you make our stuff invisible?" Grogfang asked. Blitzmek looked offended. "Course I can. Well, probably, maybe. Gonna need more bits, though." The pulse fire outside had stopped. Grogfang peered out a window but saw nothing. The Tau had pulled back, probably reassessing now that the orcs had killed one of their own. "They'll be back," Stabby said. "With more of 'em." "Good," Grogfang replied. "Let 'em come. Now we know they can be killed." As they settled in to wait, Grogfang felt a savage satisfaction. First blood to the orcs. The invisible enemies weren't so invisible anymore, and they could bleed like any other git. The hunt was just getting started. Night fell over the ruins, though the difference was marginal given the perpetual smog that hung over everything. Grogfang's team had fortified their position as best they could, which for orcs meant piling rubble in doorways and arguing about the best firing positions. Blitzmek had spent the time dissecting the dead Tau's equipment with the manic glee. Parts were strewn across the floor as he muttered to himself about phase alignments and refractive indices. "So they's not really invisible," he announced suddenly. "They's just bending light around themselves, like hiding behind a mirror, but the mirror's everywhere." "That's still invisible," Stabby pointed out. "Yeah, but it's different invisible. Means I can detect 'em better if I know what to look for." Grogfang left them to their debate. His mechanical eye was fixed on the darkness outside, switching between vision modes. The Tau were out there, he could feel it. Watching, waiting, planning. "Boss," Niptooth whispered from his corner. "Why ain't they attacking?" "Because they's thinking," Grogfang replied. "Not like proper enemies what just charge in. They's making plans." "Not good," the Grot whimpered. Grogfang didn't like it either if he was honest. Plans meant the enemy might do something unexpected, but it also meant they were taking the orcs seriously now. That was good. Being taken seriously meant better fights. Boomgob had fallen asleep leaning against his big shooter, snoring loud. Grogfang considered waking him but decided against it. When the attack came, Boomgob would wake up fast enough. The heavy weapons specialist had an uncanny ability to go from dead asleep to maximum DACA in seconds. Stabby emerged from the shadows near a window. "They's probing," he reported. "Seen 3 different shimmers testing our perimeter, looking for weak spots. Let 'em look, we's ready for 'em this time." The commando grinned, a disturbing sight with all his filed teeth. Never hunted invisible prey before. It's educational. That was one way to put it. Grogfang had learned more about fighting in the last few hours than in years of battling regular enemies. These Tau forced you to think, react, and adapt. It was almost unorky, but in a good way. The kind of way that made you a better fighter. "Got it!" Blitzmek suddenly shouted, making everyone jump. Even Boomgob stirred slightly. "I figured out how to track 'em." He held up his detector, which now had parts from the Tau stealth suit crudely welded onto it. The device looked even more ramshackle than before, but the lights were blinking in what seemed like a purposeful pattern. "See, their invisible fields make a sort of bubble, and the bubble pushes air around different. So if I tune this to detect air what's being pushed wrong." The detector suddenly started beeping rapidly. Blitzmek's eyes went wide. "Oh Zog, they's coming. Lots of 'em." Grogfang didn't need to give orders. His team, for all their quirks, knew their business. Stabby melted back into the shadows. Boomgob woke instantly, his big shooter swinging toward the nearest entrance. Even Niptooth grabbed a piece of rebar, though he held it like it might bite him. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Pulse fire lit up the night, blue bolts of energy slamming into their makeshift fortifications. But this time, Grogfang could see the shimmers moving, thanks to Blitzmek's warning. "Left side," he roared. Boomgob swiveled and opened fire, his big shooter filling the air with hot lead. One of the shimmers stumbled, its stealth field flickering. "Got another one coming through the back," Blitzmek called out, watching his detector. Stabby was already moving, intercepting the invisible infiltrator. The commando's blade struck sparks off invisible armor, and suddenly two figures were locked in close combat, one visible and one not. Grogfang drew his slugger and fired at another shimmer, grinning as he saw blood spray from an invisible wound. The Tau's stealth field failed, revealing a warrior clutching his shoulder. "They's trying to flank us," Niptooth squeaked from his position. The Tau were good, coordinating their attacks to keep the orcs pinned while they moved in close. But they'd made one mistake. They were fighting orcs like they'd fight humans or Eldar. They expected the orcs to stay defensive, to hunker down and weather the storm. Grogfang had other ideas. He bellowed a mighty warg, the ancient war cry erupting from his throat. "Boomgob, covering fire. Everyone else follow me." He charged from cover, slugger blazing. Behind him, Boomgob's big shooter roared approval, filling the air with enough dakka to make even invisible enemies think twice about showing themselves. Stabby appeared from nowhere, already covered in blood, his knives wet with alien gore. Blitzmek followed, one hand holding his detector while the other waved a crackling power wrench. Even Niptooth, caught up in the moment, charged with them, squeaking his own tiny warg. The Tau hadn't expected this. Their carefully coordinated attack fell apart as the orcs smashed into their lines like a green wrecking ball. Stealth fields flickered and failed as their wearers tried to dodge crude but effective orc weapons. Grogfang's chopper found a Tau warrior who'd been too slow to dodge, the heavy blade cleaving through advanced armor like it was paper. Another Tau tried to back away, but Grogfang's mechanical eye tracked his movement perfectly, and his slugger barked twice. Stabby was in his element, appearing behind Tau warriors and introducing them to his extensive knife collection. The commando moved like smoke, always where the enemy didn't expect him. Blitzmek had somehow managed to override a Tau drone and was now cackling madly as he made it attack its former allies. Even Niptooth managed to contribute, tripping a Tau who was backing away from Boomgob's sustained fire. The alien went down, and Boomgob's next burst ensured he didn't get back up. In minutes, it was over. The surviving Tau had retreated, leaving their dead behind. Stealth suits lay scattered around the building, their advanced technology no match for good old-fashioned orc brutality. Grogfang stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard but grinning wide. His team gathered around him, all sporting various wounds but all alive. "That was proper good," Boomgob exclaimed, reloading his big shooter. "Can we do it again?" "They'll be back," Stabby assured him, "but they'll be more careful next time." "Good," Grogfang said, "makes the hunt better." Blitzmek was already scavenging the Tau bodies, stuffing technology into various pouches and bags. "So much tech, so many possibilities, I could make us all invisible." "Let's focus on finding them first," Grogfang suggested. As they secured their position again, Niptooth tugged on Grogfang's arm. The Grot looked up at him with something approaching awe. "Boss, we beat 'em. We beat the invisible gits." "Course we did," Grogfang replied. "We's orcs. We's made for winning." But the truth was, this victory felt different. They hadn't just won through being bigger and stronger and louder. They'd won by being smarter, by adapting, by learning from their enemy and turning those lessons against them. It was the most un-orky thing Grogfang had ever done, and he loved every second of it. The night was still young, and somewhere out in the ruins, the Tau were regrouping, planning their next move, preparing new tactics. Grogfang's mechanical eye whirred with anticipation. Let them come. Each battle made his team better. Each encounter taught them something new. The next morning found them moving deeper into the ruins. The Tau hadn't attacked again during the night, which worried Grogfang more than any assault would have. Enemies that knew when not to fight were dangerous enemies. Blitzmek had spent the dawn hours cobbling together new devices from scavenged Tau tech. He now wore what looked like a Tau drone welded to his back, with various antennas and sensors sticking out at odd angles. "I calls it the Findy Thing Mark II, he announced proudly. 10 times better than the old one." "What happened to Mark I?" Stabby asked. Blitzmek pointed to a smoking crater nearby. "Got a bit explody." But this one's much more stable. They followed the detective's guidance through the maze of collapsed buildings and rubble-strewn streets. The Tau had been busy. Grogfang found more evidence of their presence. Carefully concealed observation posts supply caches hidden in unlikely places. "They's been here a while," Stabby observed, examining some Tau markings on a wall. "This ain't just raiding, they's claiming territory." Grogfang grunted. The Tau were always looking for new worlds to add to their empire. But why start with attacking Orc patrols? Why not just announce themselves and have a proper war? "Boss," Niptooth called from ahead, "you's gonna want to see this." They found the Grot standing at the edge of what had once been a plaza. In the center, arranged with deliberate care, were the bodies of the missing Orc patrols. 20 dead boys, laid out in neat rows. Grogfang's mechanical eye whirred as he studied the scene. Each Orc had been killed by precise pulse fire, single shots to vital areas. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. They'd never seen their killers coming. "That ain't right," Boomgob said, his usually simple features twisted in confusion. "Orcs should die fighting, not like this." "It's a message," Stabby growled. "They's showing off, saying they can kill us whenever they want." Grogfang felt anger building in his chest, not the hot, immediate rage of battle, but something colder, more focused. These Tau thought they were better than Orcs, thought they could kill boys without giving them a chance to fight back. Well, they'd already learned that wasn't true. Time to teach them a harder lesson. "We's taking this personal now," he announced. "They wants to play games. We'll show 'em how Orcs play." The detector in Blitzmek's hands suddenly went crazy, lights flashing and alarms blaring. The mech boy's eyes went wide as he studied the readings. "Oh Zog! Oh Zog! Oh Zog! Oh Zog! Boss, we surrounded. They's everywhere." As if on cue, pulse fire erupted from a dozen hidden positions. The plaza was a killing ground, and they'd walked right into it. Blue energy bolts crisscrossed the open space, forcing the Orcs to dive for whatever cover they could find. "It's a trap," Niptooth squealed, stating the obvious. The Tau had them pinned in the open, with clear fields of fire from elevated positions. A perfect ambush. "Boomgob," Grogfang shouted. "Maximum Daka. Everyone else follow my lead." The heavy weapons specialist needed no further encouragement. His big shooter roared to life, spraying bullets in wide arcs at every muzzle flash he could see. Grogfang burst from cover, charging toward the nearest building. Behind him, his team followed, each moving in their own way. Stabby flowed from shadow to shadow. Blitzmek ran in random zigzags, somehow avoiding the worst of the fire. Niptooth scurried like a terrified beetle, moving too erratically to track. They crashed into the building's ground floor, pulse fire following them through windows and doorways. But now they were out of the killing ground, and the Tau's advantage was lessened. "Up," Grogfang ordered. "Get to their level." They stormed up the building's damaged stairs, following the sound of pulse weapons. On the third floor, they found their first group of Tau, 3 stealth suits who'd been firing down into the plaza. The aliens spun to face the Orcs, but in the confined space, their long-range advantage meant nothing. Grogfang's chopper took the first one's head off before he could bring his rifle to bear. Stabby appeared behind the second, knives finding gaps in armor excitedly. The third managed to get a shot off, the pulse bolt burning across Blitzmek's shoulder. The mech boy howled in pain and anger, then brought his power wrench down on the Tau's helmet with enough force to crumple like a squig. They worked their way through the building systematically, flushing out Tau positions with typical Orc subtlety, which is to say, none at all. Boomgob's big shooter proved invaluable in the close quarters, its massive firepower turning cover into kindling. By the time they reached the roof, they'd killed 6 more Tau and wounded several others. The remaining aliens were falling back, their perfectly planned ambush falling apart in the face of Orc aggression. From the rooftop, Grogfang could see shimmers moving through the streets below. The Tau were retreating in good order, but they were retreating nonetheless. "We's winning," Boomgob exclaimed, firing bursts at the fleeing shimmers. "We survived." "There's a difference," Stabby corrected. The commando was right. The Tau had hurt them. Everyone was sporting wounds, from minor burns to more serious injuries. Blitzmek's shoulder was badly burned, and Niptooth had somehow managed to impale himself on a piece of rebar, though not seriously. But they were alive, and they'd learned more. "They's getting predictable," Grogfang mused. "Always the same tactics." "That's 'cause they ain't orcs," Blitzmek said, wrapping his shoulder with dirty cloth. "Orcs adapt, orcs overcome. Orcs is superior." The Mech Boy's words were meant as a boast, but Grogfang heard the truth in them. The Tau were brilliant planners, but when their plans went wrong, they struggled. Orcs thrived on chaos. Every setback was just another chance to try something new. "Boss," Niptooth whimpered. "What's that?" Grogfang followed the Grot's pointing finger to see something that made his mechanical eye whir with interest. In the distance, partially hidden by the ruins, was the broken spire of what had once been a cathedral. And unless his eye was malfunctioning, there were definitely Tau moving around it. "That's they's camp," Stabby said with certainty. "Has to be. Good sight lines, defensive positions, probably underground tunnels for moving unseen." Grogfang grinned. "Then that's where we's going. But first," he added, looking at his battered team, "we need to regroup. And more importantly, we need to report back to Warboss HeadButtz. The boss would want to know they'd found the enemy." And Grogfang had some ideas about how to take that cathedral. As they made their way back through the ruins, Grogfang couldn't help but feel proud of his team. They'd faced an enemy unlike any they'd fought before and come out on top, not through brute strength alone, but through cunning, adaptation, and good old orc stubbornness. The hunt was changing them, making them better, and Grogfang couldn't wait to see what they'd become by the end of it. The journey back to camp was uneventful, which by orc standards was almost disappointing. Boomgob kept hoping for another ambush, just so he could use up more ammunition. They entered the orc camp to find it in its usual state of barely controlled chaos. Grots scurried about their business, orcs brawled in the fighting pits, and somewhere a mech was working on something that produced thick black smoke and occasional explosions. Word of their return spread quickly. By the time they reached the Warboss's throne room, a crowd had gathered. Other orcs wanted to know about these invisible enemies. Were they real? Were they worth fighting? Had Grogfang's team actually killed any? Grogfang ignored the questions, pushing through the crowd with his team in tow. HeadButtz was where they'd left him, sitting on his throne of welded tank parts. But now he looked even more irritated than before. "Grogfang," the Warboss bellowed. "You's back already. Better have good news." "Got great news, boss," Grogfang replied, thumping his chest in salute. "Found your invisible gits. Killed a bunch of 'em too." The throne room went quiet. Even the background noise of the camp seemed to fade as every orc present leaned in to listen. "They's Tau," Grogfang continued. "Blue-skinned gits with fancy tech. Stealth suits what make 'em invisible. Been using the ruins as a base, picking off our boys with long-range weapons." HeadButtz leaned forward, his massive jaw working as he processed this information. "Heard of 'em. Supposed to be all shooty and no choppy." "That true enough, boss, but they's smart, real smart, got tactics and plans and all sorts of unorky thinking." "So how'd you beat 'em?" another orc called out from the crowd. Grogfang grinned. "By being orcs. When they shot at us, we charged. When they hid, we found 'em. When they planned, we improvised." He gestured to his team. "Stabby here out-sneaked their sneaky gits. Blitzmek figured out their tech and made it work for us. Boomgob. Well, Boomgob shot everything until it stopped moving." "I did," Boomgob confirmed proudly. "Lots of Dakar. Even the Grot contributed," Grogfang continued, causing Niptooth to squeak in surprise at being mentioned. "Found their ambushes by being scared of everything." The crowd laughed at that, and even HeadButtz cracked a grin. But the Warboss's expression quickly turned serious again. "So they's still out there?" "Yeah, boss. Holed up in a big cathedral in the middle of the ruins. Probably got it fortified real good. Gonna need more boys to dig 'em out proper." HeadButtz was quiet for a moment, considering. Around him, his lieutenants and advisors waited for his decision. Finally, the massive Warboss stood, his crude armor clanking. "No," he declared. "You started this hunt, you finish it. Take your team back out there and bring me Tau heads." Grogfang felt a surge of pride and concern in equal measure. Pride that the Warboss trusted him to finish the job. Concerned that 5 orcs, well 4 and a runt, against an entrenched Tau position was asking a lot, even for orcs. But he wasn't about to argue. That would be un-orky. You got it, boss. We'll bring you their heads. Maybe their tech too, if Blitzmek don't blow it all up. When do we go back? Boomgob asked, still riding high on the day's violence. Tomorrow, Grogfang decided. Need to rest, resupply and plan. Yeah, I said plan. These Tau got me thinking all tactical-like. More laughter from the crowd, but it was good-natured. They'd all seen the wounds on Grogfang's team, the evidence of hard fighting. If being tactical helped kill invisible enemies, then maybe tactical wasn't so bad. As the crowd dispersed, HeadButtz called Grogfang over for a private word. The Warboss's expression was unreadable as he studied his hunting party leader. These Tau, HeadButtz said quietly. They really as smart as you say. Smarter, boss. They turned that whole place into a killing ground. Would have got us too if we'd fought like they expected. And you beat 'em by not fighting like they expected. Grogfang nodded. They plan for everything, but they can't plan for orcs being orcs. HeadButtz grinned, showing all his filed teeth. Good, and Grogfang. Yeah, boss. Bring me something impressive. These other gits are getting restless. Need to show 'em we still the biggest and the best. A pile of Tauheads ought to do it. Grogfang thumped his chest again in salute and left to rejoin his team. They'd gathered near Blitzmek's workshop, where the mech boy was already tinkering with his salvaged Tau tech. So we's going back tomorrow? Stabby asked. Yeah, but this time we go prepared. Blitzmek, can you make more of those detector things? Course, already got ideas for improvements, needs more lights. And maybe a horn. Boomgob, you're gonna need more Dakar, lots more. The Heavy's face lit up like a child given a present. More Dakar is best Dakar. Stabby, I want you to think about that cathedral. Ways in, ways out. How would you defend it? How would you attack it? The commando nodded thoughtfully. Already got some ideas, boss. Tau like high ground and clear sight lines. Bet they've turned that place into a fortress. And Niptooth. Grogfang looked down at the Grot, who was trying to make himself as small as possible. You're gonna be our secret weapon. Me, Niptooth squeaked. But I'm not a weapon, I'm barely even a Grot. Exactly, they won't expect you, and your luck's kept you alive this long. Time to see if it works on Tau. As his team dispersed to prepare, Grogfang found himself alone with his thoughts. Tomorrow they go back into the ruins. Back to face an enemy that fought with tactics and technology instead of proper orky brutality. But that was what made it exciting. Each encounter taught them something new. Each battle made them better. By the time this hunt was over, they'd be the smartest, cunningest, most dangerous orcs in HeadButz's warg. His mechanical eye whirred as he gazed toward the ruins in the distance. Somewhere out there, the Tau were probably planning too. Preparing new strategies, new ambushes, new ways to kill orcs without giving them a proper fight. Let them plan. Grogfang and his boys would do what orcs did best. They'd adapt, they'd overcome, and they'd have a right proper time doing it. The next morning came too soon for some and not soon enough for others. Boomgob had been up all night attaching extra ammunition to himself until he could barely walk. Blitzmek had created 3 new detectors, each more complex and unlikely than the last. Stabby had drawn crude maps of the cathedral based on his memory, marking potential entry points and kill zones. And Niptooth had tried to run away twice during the night, only to be dragged back by other Grots who didn't want to be volunteered as his replacement. They set out as the sun struggled to penetrate the perpetual smog. The ruins seemed different now that they knew what lurked within. Every shadow could hide a Tau warrior. Every piece of rubble could conceal a trap. They's watching us, Stabby said as they entered the outskirts. Can feel it. Good, Grogfang replied. Let 'em watch. But they were more careful this time. They moved in bounds, one group covering while the other advanced. It was almost military tactics, though any human commander would have wept at their interpretation of proper procedure. Blitzmek's detectors proved their worth several times, warning of Tau observation posts before they could be spotted. Each time, they changed their route, avoiding the watchers rather than engaging them. Why ain't we fighting them? Boomgob complained after the 3rd detour. Because we's hunting bigger prey, Grogfang explained patiently. No point killing scouts when we's after the whole base. They made steady progress through the ruins, their route taking them in a wide arc around the cathedral. Grogfang wanted to approach from an unexpected direction, use some of that tactical thinking he'd been developing. As they got closer, the evidence of Tau presence increased. Supply crates marked with alien symbols. Defensive positions dug into rubble, even what looked like a landing pad cleared in a former park. "They's been busy," Stabby observed. "This ain't no temporary camp, they's planning to stay." "Then we'll just have to unconvince them," Grogfang said. They found a good observation position in a half-collapsed building. From the upper floors, they had a clear view of the cathedral and its surroundings. What they saw made even Grogfang whistle in appreciation. The Tau had turned the cathedral into a fortress. The main building bristled with weapon positions. Stealth fields shimmered around defensive posts. Drones buzzed through the air in regular patterns. Every approach was covered by overlapping fields of fire. "That's a lot of Dakar," Boomgob said, with something approaching reverence. "How we supposed to get in there?" Niptooth whimpered. "They'll see us coming from miles away." "Maybe that's the point," Grogfang mused. "They want us to see how strong they are. Want us to attack head-on so they can cut us down." "So we don't attack head-on," Stabby suggested. "Exactly. We get sneaky. We get clever. We get unorky." The team exchanged glances. Being unorky went against everything they believed in. But then again, so did running from a fight, and sometimes that was the smart thing to do. First, we watch. Learn their patterns. Then, we make them come to us. Over the next several hours, they observed the Tau defenses carefully. Grogfang's mechanical eye proved invaluable, able to zoom in on distant details and track movement patterns. Slowly, a picture emerged. The Tau were disciplined, but that discipline made them predictable. Guard changes happened at regular intervals. Drone patrols followed set routes. Supply runs came and went on a schedule. "They's like a machine," Stabby observed. "Everything precise and timed." "And what happens when you throw a wrench in a machine?" Grogfang asked. Blitzmek perked up. "It breaks or explodes, sometimes both." "Exactly. So let's be that wrench." The plan, such as it was, involved using the Tau's own tactics against them. Instead of a frontal assault, they'd create chaos on the periphery. Hit supply runs, ambush patrols, generally make nuisances of themselves until the Tau were forced to respond. "But will it work on Tau enemies?" Stabby wondered. "Only one way to find out," Grogfang replied. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Blitzmek rigged explosive surprises from salvaged materials. Stabby scouted approach routes and escape paths. Boomgob cleaned his big shooter with the reverence of a tech priest tending a holy relic. Even Niptooth contributed. As darkness fell, they put their plan into action. The first target was a Tau supply convoy, 3 skimmers loaded with equipment returning to the cathedral. They waited until the convoy was passing through a narrow street, then struck. Blitzmek's explosives brought down walls on either side, trapping the skimmers. Boomgob opened up with his big shooter, the heavy slugs sparking off energy shields but keeping the Tau busy. Stabby and Grogfang charged from opposite sides, getting in close where Tau range advantages meant nothing. The fight was brief but vicious. Caught off guard, the Tau couldn't bring their superior firepower to bear. 3 skimmers destroyed, their crews dead, and their supplies scattered across the street. But Grogfang didn't let his team linger to loot. That wasn't the point. They faded back into the ruins before Tau reinforcements could arrive, leaving the enemy to puzzle over what had happened. They repeated the tactic throughout the night. A patrol ambushed here, an observation post destroyed there. Never staying in one place long enough for the Tau to respond in force. Always hitting where they weren't expected. By dawn, they'd killed more than a dozen Tau and destroyed valuable equipment. More importantly, they'd disrupted the enemy's careful routines. From their observation post, they could see increased activity around the cathedral. Patrols doubled, defensive positions reinforced. The machine was adapting to the wrench in its gears. "They's getting worried," Stabby observed with satisfaction. "Good, worried enemies make mistakes." "Boss," Niptooth said, tugging on Grogfang's arm. "Something's different. A new type of Tau unit was deploying from the cathedral. Larger than the stealth suits, more heavily armed, moving with purpose. "Oh, that's interesting," Blitzmek said, studying them through a salvaged Tau scope. "Proper battle suits, much more killy than the sneaky ones." "Looks like we got their attention," Grogfang said. "Time for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved being even more annoying. They left false trails for Tau patrols to follow, set up decoy positions that exploded when investigated, even used some of Blitzmek's jury-rigged Tau tech to send false signals, making it seem like there were orcs everywhere. The Tau response was predictable in its efficiency. They deployed in force, sweeping sectors systematically, trying to pin down their tormentors. But Grogfang's team was always one step ahead, their orky randomness making them impossible to predict. By the second night, the Tau were fully focused on hunting their hunters, which was exactly what Grogfang wanted. Because while the enemy was chasing shadows in the ruins, they weren't watching their own base as carefully. "Now we go for the throat," Grogfang announced. "While they's out looking for us, we go where they don't expect, right into their camp." The team exchanged glances. It was audacious, even by orc standards, but it was also so unexpected that it might just work. "Besides," Boomgob said, hefting his big shooter, "been saving up Daka, need something big to shoot at." The assault on the cathedral would be their greatest challenge yet, but Grogfang was confident. His team had grown beyond simple orc hunters. They'd become something new, something that could outthink thinking enemies. The final hunt was about to begin. They approached the cathedral through the old sewage systems, a route Stabby had discovered during his reconnaissance. It was dark, cramped, and smelled bad enough to make even orcs wrinkle their noses, but it was also completely undefended. "Tau don't like getting dirty," Stabby explained as they sloshed through knee-deep muck. "Too clean for their own good." Niptooth rode on Boomgob's shoulders, the big orc seemingly unbothered by the extra weight or the Grot's constant whimpering about the smell. They emerged in the cathedral's lower levels, in what had once been storage crypts. Ancient human bones crunched under their feet as they oriented themselves. Above, they could hear the hum of Tau technology and the occasional voice speaking in the aliens' clipped language. "Right," Grogfang whispered. "Remember the plan. We go up, cause as much damage as possible, then zog off to the big area. That's where their command center will be." "What if the plan goes wrong?" Niptooth asked. Stabby looked at the Grot and made a motion with his thumb across his throat. Everyone but Niptooth laughed. They found a stairway leading up and began their ascent. Blitzmek's detector clicked softly, warning of nearby technology. As they reached the ground level, they could see why. The Tau had transformed the cathedral's interior into a technological marvel. Hollow displays flickered with tactical data. Drones floated through the air on patrol routes. Energy barriers blocked key corridors. It was as far from the cathedral's original purpose as imaginable. Blitzmek's breaths were heavy, his eyes wide with tech lust. "Focus," Grogfang reminded him. "We can loot after we win." They struck without warning. Boomgob announced their presence by opening fire on a cluster of drones, his big shooter turning the sophisticated machines into scrap metal. The sound echoed through the cathedral like thunder. Tau warriors responded immediately, but they were expecting attacks from outside, not within. Pulse fire filled the air, but the orcs were already moving. Grogfang's chopper claimed the first warrior, the heavy blade cleaving through armor and flesh with equal ease. Stabby seemed to be everywhere at once, his knives finding targets with deadly precision. He moved through the Tau ranks like a ghost, leaving blood and confusion in his wake. Blitzmek had somehow hacked into a Tau drone again and was cackling madly as he used it to attack its fellows. The confusion this caused was worth more than any amount of Daka. Niptooth threw debris and made noise to distract Tau warriors at crucial moments. His terror had transformed into a sort of manic energy, the kind that only came when you realized you were probably going to die anyway, so might as well make it count. They fought their way through the cathedral's halls, leaving destruction in their wake. Tau reinforcements poured in, but in the confined spaces, their technological advantages were minimized. It came down to close-quarters brutality, and in that arena, orcs were supreme. Grogfang roared, pointing ahead. That's where we need to be. The massive doors were sealed by an energy barrier, but Blitzmek produced something from his collection of salvaged tech. With a few adjustments and what sounded like an Orky prayer, he slapped it against the barrier. The device exploded, taking the barrier with it. Inside, they found what they were looking for. The Tau Command Center, complete with the alien commander in his enlarged crisis suit. Around him, his bodyguard raised their weapons. The Tau commander spoke, his voice filtered through translation software, producing oddly accented Gothic. So, you are the primitives who caused trouble. Yes, primitive. Grogfang grinned, showing all his teeth. The battle that followed was the stuff of legend, at least by Orc standards. The Tau commander was skilled, his crisis suit's weapons devastating. His bodyguard fought with disciplined precision, covering each other's weaknesses. But Grogfang's team had learned. They didn't fight like Orcs were supposed to fight. They used cover, coordinated their attacks, even fell back when pressed too hard. It was tactical, it was smart, and it was completely unexpected. Boomgob's big shooter kept the bodyguard pinned while Stabby worked his way around their flanks. Blitzmek used his salvaged tech to disrupt their targeting systems. Niptooth, in a moment of desperate bravery, managed to get under the commander's crisis suit and damage one of its leg servos. And Grogfang did what he did best. He hunted. His mechanical eye tracked the commander's movements, predicted his patterns, found the weakness in his defense. When the moment came, he struck. His chopper met the crisis suit's armor in a shower of sparks. The first blow was deflected, but Grogfang had learned patience. He struck again and again. The commander tried to bring his weapons to bear, but Grogfang was inside his reach, too close for the ranged weapons to target. With a final mighty blow, Grogfang's chopper found its mark. The crisis suit's chest armor split open, revealing the Tau commander within. The alien's eyes were wide with disbelief. Impossible. You are. Just savages. The translation device sputtered. The chopper fell, and the Tau commander's head rolled across the chapel floor. Around them, the remaining Tau faltered, their disciplined coordination falling apart without their leader. Grogfang stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard but triumphant. His team gathered around him, all wounded but all alive. They'd done it, they'd hunted the hunters and won. That was, Stabby paused, searching for words. That was beautiful, boss, properly orky but also smart. We showed them invisible gits, Boomgob exclaimed, reloading his big shooter out of habit. Blitzmek was already looting Tau equipment. Gonna make such beautiful things. Even Niptooth looked proud, standing as tall as a Grot could stand. We did it. We actually did it. I'm not dead. Grogfang picked up the commander's head, studying it with his mechanical eye. The Tau had been worthy opponents. They'd pushed him and his team to become better and more dangerous. In a way, he was almost sad the hunt was over. Come on, lads, he said. Let's get this back to HeadButtz. Show him what his hunters can do. As they left the cathedral, laden with trophies and salvaged technology, Grogfang couldn't help but feel that something had changed. They weren't just orcs anymore. They were orcs who had learned, adapted, evolved. They were still brutal, still savage, still filled with the joy of battle. But now they were also cunning in ways that would make any orc proud. The hunt had changed them, and Grogfang suspected it was just the beginning. The journey back to camp was a victory march. Grogfang walked at the front, the Tau commander's head dangling from his belt. Behind him, his team displayed their own trophies. Stabby had collected an impressive array of Tau weapons. Blitzmek struggled under the weight of all the technology he'd salvaged. Boomgob had somehow strapped an entire Tau drone to his back, though it was thoroughly ventilated by bullet holes. Even Niptooth carried something, a Tau helmet that was almost as big as he was. They entered the throne room to thunderous approval. Warboss HeadButtz stood from his throne, his massive frame towering over everyone present. Grogfang, he boomed. You actually did it. You hunted the unhuntable. Grogfang thumped his chest in salute, then threw the commander's head at HeadButz's feet. Told you we would, boss. Invisible gits ain't so tough when you know how to look for 'em. Tell me everything, HeadButtz demanded, settling back onto his throne. How'd you beat 'em? So Grogfang told the tale. He told of Stabby outsneaking the sneaky, of Blitzmek turning enemy tech against them, of Boomgob's glorious Daka, and even of Niptooth's unlikely contributions. The assembled orcs listened with rapt attention. This wasn't like their usual battle stories of charging and krumping. This was something new, something that required actual thinking. And yet, it was still unmistakably orky in its execution. The warboss leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with interest. And their base, this cathedral, full of tech and supplies, boss, enough to outfit a proper warg if we go get it. The throne room erupted in excited chatter. New tech meant new weapons. New weapons meant better fights. Better fights meant more fun. It was simple, and Grogfang and the Boyz would be ready.